What you're witnessing there is what is called a blood moon, the result of a total lunar eclipse, which results Right, aside from the moon, we have on Sunday Live 2 interviews, and we'll have one on claims of financial misappropriation made against the Friends of the Karura Forest by the Kenya Forest Service Chief Conservator last week. Given it is Sunday, we are in a new week, and that was on Tuesday. So we have a board member of the FKF, not the Football Federation of Kenya. His name is Professor Karanja Njoroge. Aside from that, we also look at the state of humanitarian support in the country, and we will have in studio two persons, one representing Oxfam and another panelist representing the ASALs. So from Oxfam, we have Bessie Nikozi, who is the social protection lead, Oxfam Kenya, and we also have Ahmed Ibrahim Abdi, and he is the convener of the ASAL Humanitarian Network. ASAL meaning arid and semi-arid lands. That's it. So do stay tuned to Sunday Live. We begin, as is the custom, with the highlights. Learning shut down in Gatundu South. 29 boarding schools closed indefinitely. 25 students arrested over arson plot.
When I went in there, I was told not to go because there was no space. The machines were only two and the patients were many.
Plight of kidney disease patients. Hundreds stranded in Kerugoya as critical dialysis equipment breaks down. Mourning Dalmas Otieno. President Ruto leads Kenyans in mourning former cabinet minister and long-serving politician Dalmas Otieno.
Sisi tumeshikana kama United Opposition na tumekubaliana tutatoa candidate moja wa kung'ang'ana na William Ruto.
United against President Ruto. Opposition leaders to field one candidate to face it off with Ruto in 2027. Our sign language interpreter tonight is none other than Yulan Zale. And remember, you can speak to us. The hashtag is Citizen Sunday Live. My X handle is at @OBurrows, at Citizen TV Kenya. The SMS line, which will be running, and all of this will be running right at the bottom of your screen, is 22422. Now we begin this broadcast with a learning shutdown in Gatundu South, Kiambu County, where 29 boarding schools have been closed indefinitely, and that is following a wave of arson attacks just weeks into the third term. Citizen TV has established the arrest of at least 25 students in connection with the planned arson attacks, with stakeholders in the education sector in the country now calling for swift investigations into the incidents that have the likely effect of academic disruption ahead of the national exams. With that report, and kicking us off on Sunday Live, is Ayub Abdikadir.
The visibly shaken faces of learners at Muroria Boys welcome us. It's among institutions that have been shut indefinitely, and here we met guardians trooping to the institution and pick up their children. Other affected schools are Ushekaini Girls, Gadhiru Boys and Muhoho Boys, where fires have destroyed learning facilities, prompting the decision to close the institutions. The indefinite shutting of these institutions and all other sub-county boarding schools comes against the backdrop of wave of arson attacks, with preliminary investigations establishing well-choreographed scheme during the holiday period by learners who leveraged on online platforms, listing grievances they said were not addressed by school heads. The coordination, which happened on online platforms according to the lawmaker, centered around disquiet over strict frisking rules during schools reopening, tough examination rules, while others demanded for a review of the school's reopening time to between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. A coordination which authorities feared will mutate, informing the decision to shut all the schools in Gatundu South. At least 25 learners have been arrested and will be arraigned in court on Monday, with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations now taking over investigations ahead of crisis stakeholders meeting to remedy the situation.
Tumepata information kwamba ni mambo ambayo yamepangwa katika mitandao ya kijamii, tukaogopa na tukahofia kwamba kunaweza kuwa na hasara kubwa. Tukasema kwanza watoto waende nyumbani, tukutane Jumatatu, tupange, tutafute suluhu, kisha tutawaita.
The incident led to chorus of concerns from parents who added their voice to the incidents and subsequent school closures.
Kuna bweni imechomwa, masaduku ya watoto yamechomwa, vitu malazi pia. Kwa hivyo kulipa nayo tutalipa, lakini ningetaka hata kama ni kulipa tusiripishwe pesa ambazo hatufai kulipa.
Tuwezi kuwa na mashule 3-4 inachomeka in just 2 to 3 weeks. It's not normal. Kwa hivyo wachunguze, wajue shida iko wapi. Sisi kama wazazi tunataka watoto wetu wasome.
The closure of the institutions also comes ahead of the national examinations, raising fears of academic calendars disruption, with guardians expressing fears of burden of reconstructing damaged infrastructure as calls mount for more preventive measures to forestall such incidences. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.
A crisis looms in Kirinyaga County for kidney disease patients after the dialysis machines in the county failed. The machines, stationed at the Kerugoya General Hospital to serve the entire county's kidney disease population, have been breaking down sequentially for the last 5 months. Currently, only 2 out of the 8 machines are working, leaving hundreds of patients stranded and in need of urgent attention.
Beatrice Mureithi, aged 76, battles not just the cold weather of Kirinyaga County, but the pain and agony of a chronic kidney disease that remains unattended to due to the lack of dialysis machines at the county's Kerugoya Referral Hospital. The county's only level 5 hospital has been witnessing the systematic breakdown of the critical dialysis machines, and patients like Beatrice and Amos Wanjau, another kidney disease patient, are feeling the heat.
No, when I went in there, I was told not to go because there was no space. The machines were only 2 and the patients were many. So I started doing my dialysis in Mount Kenya.
Tulipoenda huko asubuhi siku moja, wakatuambia hata washa mashini. Hakuna kitu inaitwa bycuts, hakuna vitu ya kutumia kwa hiyo mashini, labda sasa uende ukanunue. Na kununua ni 2,000.
Beatrice says the county's machines initially numbered 8. 6 of these have since broken down and remain unrepaired. This is piling pressure on the 2 machines and drastically cutting the time each patient spends on these machines.
We were supposed to go for 4 hours. Then we started going for 3. Then it went to 2. So a machine that is supposed to go for 4 hours, if you are supposed to go for 2 hours, then you've done only halfway. So it has not helped at all.
Amos Wanjau knows only too well the toll of those reduced sessions can have. Just like Beatrice, Wanjau was a patient at Kerugoya until the machines broke down, driving him to seek the services at a private facility.
Kila siku naamka nimefula, miguu imefula, imetoboka vidonda. Kumbe ni ile maji siku wanatolewa juu, siku wanafanywa dialysis hivi inatakiwa. Nilikuwa nafanywa dialysis badala ya masaa 4, nafanywa masaa 3, 2.5 na sifanywe na vile inatakikana.
And seeking these life-saving services in private facilities, as they are now forced to, is an expensive affair that is often out of reach for most of the patients who have had to sell their assets to afford the weekly sessions.
Somebody has failed us in the medical field, in the renal unit. That one they failed us, kabisa.
The situation has caught the attention of the county senator, who now wants the machines repaired as a matter of urgency it is.
Ugonjwa wa figo ni ugonjwa ambao usiposafishwa damu kwa wakati unaofaa, mtu anaendelea kudhoofika kiafya na sana sana wengi ulemewa. Na katika wakati kama huu, mimi sijajua ni kwa nini na pesa zimekuwa zikija kwa kaunti ya Kirinyaga. Kwa nini hakukuwa na mpango maalum wa kuhakikisha kwamba kuna mashine zingine mpya, kwa sababu wale watu ambao wakazi wanategemea na kupeana hizi huduma ni watu ambao pia hawana uwezo.
When contacted, the Kirinyaga County Governor Anne Waiguru maintained that it was the duty of the national government to purchase the machines through the NESP program. She has also stated that the machines will be delivered to the hospital on Wednesday, a promise that patients like Beatrice and Amos can only hope will be fulfilled to enable them continue with their treatment. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission has summoned 8 current and former Nakuru County chief officers over alleged misuse of public funds. County Attorney Caleb Nyamwange and Public Service Chief Officer Charles Kowech will be the first to face grilling, as the EACC probes the alleged irregular payment of over 22 million shillings to private law firms. As Mary Mwoki reports, the move comes just 3 days after the Governor, Susan Kihika, was put to task by the Senate Public Accounts Committee over misappropriation claims.
3 days after senators directed the EACC to investigate Governor Susan Kihika's administration over billions of shillings in questionable expenditures, the anti-graft agency has moved into action and summoned 8 county officials for grilling and statement recording. Caleb Nyamwange, the county attorney, will appear for grilling on Monday, 8th September 2025, with his counterpart, the Chief Officer for Public Service, Charles Kowech, taking the hot seat later in the afternoon. On Tuesday, 9th September, Gladys Kamuren, Chief Officer for Gender and Youth, will appear for grilling in the morning, followed by the former Chief Officer for Finance, Joseph Malinda, mid-morning, with Anne-Marie Kuria, Director of Supply Chain Management, being the last to face the grilling panel at 2 p.m. The head of budget and planning, Ashina Wanga, will be the first to record her statement on Wednesday. Martin Nagai, Chief Officer in the Governor's Office, at 11 a.m. And finally, Evelyn Kakai, Chief Officer for Finance, at 2 p.m. Last Wednesday, Governor Kihika was on the spot before the Senate Public Accounts Committee, struggling to explain why her administration sidelined the county attorney and hired private law firms without approval. Senators also questioned over 22 million shillings paid out without documentation.
Do we have the county attorney in the room?
He should have been here, but he had...
Has he absconded duty?
The Auditor General's 2022-2023 report flagged over 1.5 billion shillings in irregular expenditures under Governor Kihika's watch, including double payments, questionable procurements, and unverified legal fees. Mary Mwoki, Citizen TV.
Abdirahman Mohammed, former Chief Officer Health in Isiolo County, who was allegedly abducted and assaulted by Isiolo Governor Abdi Hassan alias Guyo, has broken his silence, saying he does not feel safe 3 months after the harrowing ordeal. Abdirahman, who has welcomed the Director of Public Prosecution's recommendation to charge Governor Guyo and 8 other suspects, has told Citizen TV how he was trailed from Nakuru to Manzoni in Machakos County on the fateful night before being disarmed, assaulted, kidnapped and dumped in Ruai. With those details is Gatete Njoroge.
A clearly shaken Abdirahman Mohammed shows us the scars of the night of horror on June 13th, what was supposed to be a restful night after a long drive from Nakuru County turned to a night of torture for a man who was dedicated to saving lives as Chief Officer Health in Isiolo County. He had sensed danger even before the attackers pounced on him.
Throughout our journey back to Nairobi, we could feel that there were vehicles trailing us. We decided to go to outskirts of Nairobi, where our chosen destination happened to be Outback Hotel. Immediately when we arrived, like 5-10 minutes, several vehicles also came into the hotel.
4 county officials approached him as he disembarked from his car. They inquired about his mission in the area. Abdirahman, who was in the company of 16 Isiolo MCAs, who supported Governor Abdi Hassan Elias Guyo impeachment, briefed them before one of the officials told him about their mission.
He asked me that the governor was there and that he wanted to have a word with me. I walked to where the governor was, and he said, I was surrounded by many people. I was disarmed, beaten there, and he said, weke pingu na weke kwa put.
It's at this moment where he reportedly lost his Glock pistol with 15 rounds of ammunition, an iPhone, 70,000 shillings in cash, and personal belongings. Abdirahman was later found dumped with a fractured arm in Ruai sewage area after about 3 hours.
I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe because the individual who did this to me is still out there, just thumbed there.
The former chief officer has welcomed the Director of Public Prosecution's recommendations to have Governor Guyo and 7 others arrested and charged with kidnapping and robbery with violence, saying he hopes the wheels of justice will give him a smile that was violently taken away. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
President William Ruto has led Kenyans in mourning the former Rongo Member of Parliament and long-serving Minister Dalmas Otieno Anyango, who died at his home in Nairobi aged 80. His family says he was found dead at his Kileleshwa residence by a domestic worker without showing any signs of illness. Many have described him as a visionary leader who left behind a legacy of good governance. Willie Lusige has more.
The next is Civil Service or Public Service, Honorable Dalmas Otieno.
Kenyans are mourning the once vocal former Rongo Member of Parliament and Cabinet Minister Dalmas Otieno Anyango, who died at his Nairobi home on Sunday, aged 18. President William Ruto eulogized him as a visionary leader and a statesman whose ideas and leadership will continue to inspire generations. On his part, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who also visited Otieno's family, mourned him as a committed public servant who believed in efficient and effective public service as the cornerstone of good governance. According to the family, the former legislator died on Sunday at his Kileleshwa home.
At about 10 o'clock, we were told that my father was unresponsive. Mzee was unresponsive. It seems like maybe he was hypoglycemic.
Damas was a wonderful father. He managed to bring change to the country, to the continent, and to the world.
Leaders who accompanied the family at Lee Funeral Home retaliated that death of Otieno has robbed Kenya of a leader who greatly shaped the nation's socio-economic landscape during his tenure as a Member of Parliament and Minister.
He served this country as a minister who was dedicated and who was very keen on development. Some of his key projects are seen in the country, some of his architect in terms of development programs are seen in the country.
Tall in stature, tall in politics, tall in knowledge. And we from Migori County, we have lost somebody who was quite tall.
Otieno was first elected Rongo Member of Parliament in 1988 before serving again in 2007 and 2013. He held several ministerial dockets, including industrialization, labor and human resource development, transport and communications, and later public service.
Thank you.
He also served as a vice chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC, a position he held until 2024.
In his loss, Kenya has a huge gap because he goes with the entire repository of lessons accrued in many years of politics, governance, and leadership.
Willie Lusige, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The United Opposition has reiterated its commitment to living up to its name by fielding a presidential candidate through internal consensus. Leaders across the opposition insist that high-level consultations are ongoing to identify a formidable ticket capable of unseating President William Ruto in 2027. The opposition, speaking from separate events in Mlolongo, Machakos County and Kipipiri in Nyandarua County, also took issue with Defense Cabinet Secretary Soipan Tuya's silence on recent matters concerning Kenya's sovereignty. Melito Letenges has more.
The United Opposition is steadily shaping itself into what it hopes will be a formidable challenge to President William Ruto in the 2027 elections. But questions continue to surface about whether the centre will hold when it matters the most at the point of selecting a presidential candidate. Opposition leaders maintain that the mission to capture state power in 2027 goes beyond personal ambition.
Sisi tumeshikana kama United Opposition na tumekubaliana tutatoa candidate moja wa kung'ang'ana na William Ruto. Si ndio? Si ndio? Candidate more?
This is serious. This is a revolutionary moment. If we get it wrong, this country will never be the same again.
As they traverse the country rallying support for their coalition, internal lobbying has begun, with regional leaders pushing for their political supremos to lead the charge.
Tusiwe watu wa kutumia Mheshimiwa Kalonzo ndio tuweze kuvuka. Tunaelewana? Maneno ya kutumia party leader imeisha bwana. Kila mtu aingie kwa field ajipiganie. His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, tunasema sasa ni yeye official. Official nini? Opposition.
This comes amid reports of cracks in the coalition following the appointment of Dr. Muhisa Kitui as the spokesperson and head of the opposition secretariat. Claims DCP party leader Rigathi Gachagua has downplayed.
So tunakuwa na utofauti ya mawazo. Lakini Rigathi Gachagua ananiita. Ananiambia wewe Cleo, wewe pia unatetea vijana sana. Kila saa unataka vijana hata wazee pia wanataka kuwa pale kwa uongo.
Lazima hao majenzi na milinio watusaidie. Lakini pia lazima tutafute mtu moja wawili wako na experience, wanakaa na hao vijana wetu wanawaguide.
The leaders also condemned Defense CS Soipan Tuya for her silence amid allegations of Jubaland forces encroaching on Kenyan soil.
Minister anayehusika, if he has any credentials, should have addressed this issue. The Minister for Defense. Ananyamaza kimya, rais mwenyewe anyamaza kimya, watu wa Mandera walia.
They delivered their remarks during separate church services, Kalonzo Musyoka at AIC Kasina in Mlolongo, Machakos County, and former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua at PCEA Miharati Parish in Kipipiri, Nyandarua County. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
Africa and Caribbean countries have stepped up the push for reparatory justice and called for the reformation of the global financial system. The Addis Ababa AU Caribbean Summit held on Sunday further called for a fairer global system that attends to global needs with equal attention. Ayub Abdikadir with that report.
The second Africa-Caribbean Community Summit in Africa's diplomatic capital, Addis Ababa, re-emphasized a global order based on justice for the global south, with President William Ruto yet again leading the call for a review of the international financial system.
By strengthening our joint efforts, developing common strategies and advancing coordinated initiatives, Africa and Caribbean can ensure that reparations speak not only to the injustices of the past, but also to the inequalities of the present and the promise of the future.
It is a stance taken by the African Union and the Caribbean community.
That from Addis Ababa, Africa and the Caribbean renewed their covenant
to honor our ancestors, to uplift our descendants, and reclaim our shared destiny in freedom, justice, and unity. The African Union stands proudly and firmly with our Caribbean brothers and sisters in every step towards reparatory justice and true liberation.
This gathering is a tangible manifestation of our commitment to bridge the divide. Indeed, we are not merely building a partnership, we are reaffirming a familial bond.
The second Africa-Caribbean Community Summit in Addis Ababa comes 4 years after the first that was virtually held and hosted by President Uhuru Kenyatta in 2021, which also deliberated on building partnerships between the two continents with an emerging new global order that confronts Africa and the Caribbean. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.
A DCI officer was on Sunday arrested in Thika after shooting dead 2 boda riders near Makongeni police station following a minor accident involving his car and a motorcycle. Witnesses say the officer, who appeared drunk and violent, opened fire during an altercation, killing 2 men aged 38 and 39. Enraged residents torched his Audi despite attempts by fellow riders to calm the crowd. Thika West Police Commander confirmed the suspect was disarmed and his firearm seized. The 2 bodies were moved to General Cargo Mortuary as investigations continue.
Ile tu accident ya kawaida ilipatana na mtu wangu akiwa amebeba customer wake, akaguzwa nyuma na gari. Hapo ndipo wale walikuwa nyuma walikuja kusaidia, kuuliza huyu mwenye amewaguza, bona unaenda na umewaruza watu pale nyuma. Kupelekwa hapa station, ndio jamaa alikuwa na funjo, alikuwa mrevi sana, na hapo ndio tulinotice ako na buduki. Jamaa alitoa buduki akashoot hao majamaa wawili wenye sio wenye walikuwa kwa accident, wenye walikuwa anakuja kusaidia.
Yule mtu ako na makosa kama ni huyo wa pikipiki. Wa pikipiki tukiambiwa tuleteeni, tutalete. Sisi ni watu wa pikipiki, tukiambiwa mtu wenye ndio ako na makosa tutalete. Lakini askari akiwa ndiye ndio ako na makosa, sheria iko. Sheria ichukuliwe.
All right, we take a quick break on Sunday Live, but a reminder that we remain on the Blood Moon Watch. Our cameraman, John Gitoga, is focused intently on the spectacle. We should be in the maximum eclipse phase, which should have begun at 9:12 and is expected to last for 41 minutes. On the other side of this break, we come back with that promised interview with Professor Karanja Njoroge, board member, the Friends of the Karura Forest, a community forest association. But as we take the break, feast your eyes. Coming up, we tell you the harrowing tales of gender-based violence victims in Tana River.
Imperial Gardens Kikuyu by Username Properties. Just 15 minutes from Kikuyu town, get your 8th acre plot for just 1.249 million shillings. SMS plot to 20321 or call 0725 000 222.
All right, welcome back to Citizen Sunday Live. As I had indicated just before we took the break, I am joined by Professor Karanja Njoroge, who is a board member of the Friends of Karura Forest Association, Community Forest Association.
Yes.
So we will get back to a conversation with him in not too long. But first, let's take a look at this report by Brenda Wanga. Victims of sexual and gender-based violence in Tana River continue to suffer not only from the abuse itself, but also from the lack of adequate support systems. The county ranks among the highest in reported cases, with drought and floods worsening the situation. As you'll hear now from Brenda Wanga, there are growing calls for stronger intervention from both government and non-state actors.
The county of Tana River is home to Kenya's longest river, stretching across more than 38,000 square kilometers. The river winds its way through the land, serving as a lifeline for communities here, but it also brings with it an ever-present threat, turning from a source of sustenance to a source of danger for the residents who depend on it. This vast county sits in a geographical environment that makes it vulnerable to the extremities of climate change. If it isn't hot and on the verge of drought as it is now, it is soaking in life-threatening, property-destroying floods, like the ones witnessed over the 2023-2024 period. Lives were lost, property destroyed, and homes displaced. Once thriving homesteads were swept away and their occupants forced into IDPs for their very own survival.
Kaona huyu mtoto wangu amelawitiwa.
Ndio mama akaniambia kaa afadhali ukufe lakini usiende kwa yule mtu.
Halima's, not her real name, was one of those families that bore the brunt of the brutal and unforgiving floods. She is now braving the vagaries of the soaring temperatures in this makeshift structure she now calls home. Halima is also now grappling with an even more harrowing ordeal, one that cuts far deeper than she could ever have imagined. The mother of four is nursing the emotional scars of abuse visited upon her children, including her youngest son, a pain she never dreamed would darken her doorstep.
Mtoto wangu alikuwa hapa, akaja kuitwa hapa. Akaenda, nilipotoka sikumuona kuwa ameenda wapi. Juu yeye ananiambia mama wananiingiza hapa kwa hii taribala hii na hii hapa na hiyo hapa. Hizo taribala hizo. Aliniambia wananiingiza hapa, wananiingiza pale juu hapa hakuna mwenyewe ameenda shambani. Sasa hizo zilikuwa zimefinikwa kabisa. Zimefanywa ukarabati wa kuwa hapo ndani huwezi ona chochote. Sasa huyo mtoto akiingizwa hapo, anafungishwa mdomo. Usiseme, nyamaza. Na yeye mtoto ananyamaza.
Halima, like thousands of climate change-induced refugees, have found themselves in camps like this in Garsen, kicked out of their homes either by the floods that come with the torrential rains or the droughts and the resultant famine. The crowding in such spaces made it ripe ground for the defilement of her 4.5-year-old son. He was repeatedly sodomized by other refugees in the camp, violence so severe that it left his small body permanently scarred, robbing him of even the most basic bodily controls.
Mwaka huu ndio akili imeruka juu nikaona huyu mtoto wangu amelawitiwa vibaya. Huyu mtoto hawezi kuzuia choo. Mkojo inatoka yenyewe, choo inatoka yenyewe. Sasa huyo utasema ni mtoto mwenzake kweli? Si mtoto mwenzake. Juu ni kazi wanamfanya. Mimi sikuwa ninajua, wakati nimemshika ndo akili imeruka.
Tana River County is one of the counties that continue to be home to high incidences of sexual and gender-based violence. The county's gender officer paints a grim picture of this prevalence.
As a county, sexual gender-based violence ndo iko zaidi juu. Almost 72 to 80% of the cases are sexual gender-based violence, followed again with intimate partner violence. Yeah, so As a county, SGBV is paramount. Ile katika culture ya kuangamiza mwanamke bado hana sauti katika county yetu. So bado utaona watoto wa kike hawana ile elimu ya yani kama mtoto wa kiume. So I can say deep-rooted cultures.
Amina, aged 22, is all too familiar with intimate partner violence. She has been married for 10 years. She got married young, but that union, which has borne her 3 children, has been anything but torture.
Nikimuuliza pia haya ananitandika. Anasema pesa mimi ndio nimetafuta. Kwani ni yako? Ni yako mnaniuliza. Kazi yake ni kutandika kila wakati. Akinitandika jirani akikuja akanini hata wale wa jirani anawatetesha. Anashikwa. Mpaka hata dakika mwisho anafungia milango jirani. Anachoka kabisa.
Despite the repeated incidences of physical and emotional abuse at the hands of her husband, Amina stays in that union. She simply has no other option. She can't go back to her home. She can't leave her husband. She has no alternative way to support herself and her children.
Anasema kwa nini umerudi? Ilikuwa nimelala kwa mzee, nimelala siku 2, siku ya 3 ndio akaniregesha kwake sasa. Hasa niniuliza mbona sijarudi kwetu? Anakuja na kaa pale. Kwani sina kwetu? Ananiambia. Hata amenipiga tena sasa. Enda baka ananivuruta nje anasema kama hujaenda basi pale nitakulunga na kisu. Ndio nikachukua virago wangu. Nimeenda kwetu na ilikuwa niko miguu chuma sina mtandio nguo yenyewe ni raruka. Nimeenda mama akaniambia kaa afadhali kufe lakini usiende kwa yule mtu.
These 2 women are both battling different forms of SGBV in this county, and their fight for justice, for survival, is now getting a boost from the efforts of a non-governmental organization, Pastoralist Girl Initiative, that operates in Garissa and Tana River. The organization had transformed a simple room at the Garsen Sub-County Hospital into a safe haven for those affected by SGBV.
We discovered there was only one GBV recovery center in Tana River County, and that one was situated in Hola in Tana River County. So the survivors, the GBV survivors within Tana Delta, which is a bit of a distance from Tana Delta to Hola, the GBV survivors were mainly treated within the healthcare center in Garseni. So you find that they were queuing just like other patients, and so there was the issue of confidentiality, and there was the issue of fear of stigmatization because they were within the community, the other patients.
This was the center where Halima brought her son after discovering that he had been defiled. After getting the needed aid, the little boy was moved to a much bigger and safer shelter in Hola. She says this was the first stop and step in her search for justice for her child.
Ndio alinifungua macho. Akaniambia hawa si mto. Ndio alinifungua macho. Akaniambia muulize vizuri huyu kijana. Hawa si watoto wenye wameharibu huyu mtoto hivi. Sasa ndo amenifungua akili. Ndio mimi najua ni huyo mtoto, sijui mbele. Huyu daktari ndo amenisaidia sana. Na namshukuru sana.
And I believe with proper planning and prioritizing the need of the locals, situations like this that are deplorable can be addressed. Yes, we will work and support as development partners, but state accountability, the provision for the people, making sure that people have decent services, social services such as education, such as health care, promoting agriculture.
For Halima's son and for Amina, the fight is not over, but with the support of a few brave people, a glimmer of hope now shines, a quiet defiance against the shadows that threatened to consume them. The establishment of the GBV Center in Garsen now means that victims of gender-based violence, especially from places like this former IDP camp, can get some level of assistance and seek redress. But it is only a small step that non-state and state actors are taking to ensure that the larger issue of gender-based violence is addressed fully in this area. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV in Garsen, Tana River County.
It must be difficult to, Brenda, I can't imagine what it's like to cover such stories, even just listening to it. It's extremely moving, troubling, and we'll get further into this conversation with Bessie Nikozi, Social Protection Lead, Oxfam Kenya, and Ahmed Ibrahim, convener of the ASOL Humanitarian Network, Oxfam's partner in humanitarian projects in northern Kenya, and we'll be looking at the state of humanitarian support. But we put a pin in that conversation. First, I'm joined by Professor Karanja Njoroge, who is a board member of the Friends of Karura Forest, which is a community forest association. And a lot has been said in the last few weeks. There has been a transition to e-citizen.
Yes.
A departure from what has been happening prior. You protested. You said, I've seen you do a number of interviews.
Yes.
So you took issue with the move, saying there was no consultation?
Absolutely. We have been involved since 2009 as a community forest association. And we have worked very well with the Kenya Forest Service throughout the 15 years. I do not see why they could not consult us on a critical issue like this one, which takes away our finances into e-citizen. It should have been negotiated with us.
All right,
it cannot just be a command and control, because saving Karura Forest took a lot of money. We didn't ask it from the government. We did not go call the minister to help us raise those funds. We raised the funds to save Karura. Karura was gone. Karura was people's plots.
All right.
We took them to court at our expense. Kenya Forest Service didn't pay for those. So how do they then just all of a sudden present us with an order from tomorrow? They didn't even do that. They said something about, and we said, oh, why should we do that? Before we knew it, they took over. They physically came and threw us out.
All right.
So it just doesn't make sense. And unless people have an ulterior motive, partnerships of any side, whether formal, private, government, community, partnerships require caring.
Okay.
So you look at your partner, you see where you've come with them, and you engage them and work with them.
All right. Speaking of engagement, so we hosted on Tuesday the Chief Conservator of Forests, Alex Lemarkoko, and he said there have been consultations that have taken place since last year, but there has been resistance from FKF, and he says it is a directive that 179 forest stations have transitioned, have migrated. So his question then was, is this a public asset or is this a private asset?
It is both. The only reason why we are not part of the 179 stations that are earning peasant, they cannot do what we are doing, is because there is a community forest association legally appointed under the law, because the law allows all forests to be governed, managed through a participatory forest management arrangement. That is the law. The law hasn't changed, and each forest has a right to establish a CFA, a community forest association, that follows the law. So once you form that association, you then create a forest management plan. It is not KFS that creates a forest management plan. It is the CFA that organizes and creates a forest management plan. Then you present it to the Kenya Forest Service. Kenya Forest looks at it, critiques it, even suggests changes to it. And when we are all agreed, then you sign, it is signed off as the plan, a 5-year plan for the forest. And then that's not enough. Once you have the plan, then you prepare a forest management agreement, meaning you co-manage the execution of that plan between KFS and CFA. And I'm afraid he never told you those stories.
Okay, but what he said, according to the Forest Management Agreement you've spoken of, that there are joint obligations of the parties.
Exactly, yes.
And part of what he highlighted as having, essentially he accused FKF of breach of contract. Because you've talked about, what is this? You've talked about, so he says, this is what Section 13F says: the parties shall prepare a work plan and budget for each financial year for approval by the service. He says that has not happened. And certified accounts shall be presented annually to the service for review by the internal and external auditors as per the provisions of the Finance Management Act 2012. And he says that has not happened.
My mouth cannot say he's a liar. Maybe he doesn't know. Because the way we manage Karura is through something called a management plan. That management plan is actually signed by KFS. And we go into management of the plan, and it's managed through a joint forest management committee. 3 officials from KFS and 3 officials from the CFA. They meet regularly every month. Is he saying he doesn't know that? I don't know.
No, he says that the joint obligation, as I said, is that there will be an account jointly run, as you've stated a number of times, jointly run by the FKF, the parties, and KFS, approved by the service. Then he says, you know, there's a work plan and budget that is supposed to be approved by KFS and submitted certified accounts. So you're saying that has happened?
It always happened. There's no money that leaves. By the way, we have a joint account. They must sign a check. That check must be signed by the CFA and the KFS in order for that money to be released. So I can't understand why he's saying we don't play ball. I mean, how have we been able to manage the affairs of this forest all this time? KFS has been part and parcel of doing everything we have done. There is none of the decisions that do not go through the Joint Forest Management Committee, which he has appointed people to sit in.
Okay. And what do you make of the argument? Because you say Karura is both a public and private asset. But he says this is a public asset, and therefore it must be subjected to the Auditor General. We have no problem. Therefore, he says these monies must be collected by a government agency.
That is not what is in our agreement. We have a management agreement with them. So did he realize that last week, 2 weeks ago? When KFS signed our management agreement, that should have been the case. That was not the case from 2009 when we took over. That forest, by the way, was gone. And this is important for Kenyans to know. There was no Karura forest. Karura forest had been divvied up as plots, taken over by thieves, taken over by rapists and killers. By the time we came in, we were salvaging nothing. In fact, I recall walking into the then director of Kenya Forest Service, they didn't call them CCF then, and Mr. Bugwa told me, and he's still alive, he told me, I don't know how you are going to do this because there are titles issued in this forest by the government, and I don't know how you'll be able to recover that. I said, please give us a chance. We'll fight them whichever way. I really, really thank those people who stuck with us because we raised money from the public, the private sector, banks, East African breweries, and I'm mentioning them because they were big giver, and all others who did that, and we saved Karura. Now that it's saved and making money, mouths have started melting with saliva, and they are now trying to get us to accept methods that will not ensure us to continue doing what we have always done for Karura.
All right. You speak of grabbed land within the forest.
Yeah, it was grabbed, yes.
So he made the case that the Kenya Forest Management Act, Section 34, makes it, and I quote, practically impossible to grab a forest in this Kenya.
Oh my goodness. Why did I go to court for 5 years? Between 2013 and 2019, I was in court. We were in court as the CFA, fighting a company called York Holdings Limited, registered in British Virgin Island, which had a title. I think our CCF doesn't know a lot of history of Karura. Okay. If he doesn't know that case, then he most likely doesn't know. And that was not the only landowner. There were other landowners who were demanding access. And I don't want to name them here, but I can name the one who took us to court. Okay. But there was a line of people who we kept talking to and saying, don't go to court, listen to what they... And sure enough, Justice Mombi Ngogi ruled in June of 2019 that there is no land belonging to a private company in Karura. That is what saved us. Okay. It was not KFS who went to fight for it. It was us. It was the community. And that community still believes that there is a chance to save Karura. And Karura can degenerate very, very quickly. In the manner that they are now trying to manage it, it can be dared to go back to what it was before.
All right.
We are trying to salvage that.
So you're back in court now? You're back in court over this directive?
Well, exactly, because the directive just doesn't make sense.
All right. Lastly, some other very heavy accusations were made, and I want you to address that in parting. No. So he said there has been fraudulent financial practice involving public funds collected by FKF, manipulation and misrepresentation of surplus revenue reported by FKF, willful non-disclosure of financial records suggesting bad faith, and I already spoke about the failure to submit work plans, absence of financial statements, bank balances and internal financial systems. Very heavy allegations. And he says this is the result of an audit undertaken by the Ministry of Environment.
The Ministry of Environment never audited us. I will repeat that again. An audit does not become an audit because someone sat in their office and wrote some literature. You appear to the auditee as, you tell us we want this document, we want this document, we want this account, and by the way, the account is a joint account. If we did something wrong, then KFS must have done something wrong because we both signed the expenditures from that account. So we never saw anybody from the ministry. So I guess you have to ask the ministry, how did they audit us without talking to us, without coming to our office, without picking documents from us? Which auditor in Kenya will approve an audit that the auditee never participated? It doesn't matter.
Especially if you consider that it stated that you didn't submit certified accounts.
But I am also worried about his besmirching us as people who are misusing or whatever. Let him produce one letter. He's the CCF. Produce one letter of concern about what we are doing. Because you don't wake up one day and accuse us of historical problems of months and months. It is a time we asked our government officers to sober up and approach matters like this with the seriousness it deserves. You just don't go saying that, oh, they did this, they did that. Let them give you a letter that says we wrote to them on this day questioning this amount of money, or we have never seen one. These guys have been friends with us. Let me tell you that we have spent more than for KFS since 2019, we have spent 115 million supporting there are various projects. Are those the projects he's saying we have misused? 118 million has been spent since 2019. And with the knowledge of the Kenya Forest Service, because they have requested them. They request us to give them money to do a field, athletic field, football field, basketball field, helicopter pad, toilets, houses. We have done 26 apartments in the KFS headquarters.
Is that for staff?
For their staff. And we do it so where is the money spent that they're talking we've misused? Let me tell you, and that is why we get very frustrated. I have never taken a shilling. And if Lemakoko can give you one note of saying Karanja received 500 shillings pro bono or whatever it is, and all my board members have sworn to only give their services free. The only people who get paid are the people we hire, our staff, our whatever. But the board members never take any money from the forest. That's how we saw to that.
Okay.
KFS, on the other hand, whenever they come for a management meeting, they require sitting allowance. KFS. What I'm saying is that it is laughable that we'd be sitting here talking about these things. He has 175 forest stations. Let him tell you one forest station that can raise even half of this money that they have spent from us, 115 that has gone to KFS. Ours is a very small forest of only 1,000 hectares, which had been completely given up. It was a den of thieves. Bodies were being collected. By the way, do you know, when we fenced, from the time we fenced to about 6 months, 9 months after, we kept discovering skeletons of people killed and dumped there. It's excruciating pain that the people of Runda, Muthaiga, Gigiri, Ridgeways, all these people came together to save that ecosystem. And instead of being grateful, it seems like this government, through KFS, is just tarnishing us.
Okay.
It's so sad.
All right, so we will have to put a pin in pause the conversation for now, because there are lots of other questions.
Thank you.
Have your staff been able to access the forest?
No.
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 Okay. So, unfortunately, because of time, I will have to conclude it here. But we will make an opportunity to pick up the conversation as the situation develops, but you have moved to court. It's been certified as urgent, so we're also keeping an eye on that court process. We've had in studio with us Professor Karanja Njoroge, who is a board member of the FKF, not Football Kenya Federation, but the Friends of Karura Forest, a community forest association. We take a break, but on the other side, as promised, following that report by Brenda Wanga, you were as moved as I was watching it. We'll be joined by staff from Oxfam and representatives of ASALS as we look at the state of humanitarian support. Coming up, a family in Uthiru cries for justice over alleged medical negligence. Thank you for staying with us on Sunday Live. As promised, I'm joined by Bessie Nikosi, who is Social Protection Lead, Oxfam Kenya, and Ahmed Ibrahim, who is convener, ASAL Humanitarian Network, and Oxfam's partner in humanitarian projects in northern Kenya. I'll start with you, Bessie. Tell us a little bit about the work that Oxfam does, and then what you do as Social Protection Lead.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. So as Oxfam, our DNA is in the humanitarian space. But over the years, having done humanitarian work, we realized that there are structural issues, underlying issues that need to be addressed in order for us to reduce the vulnerabilities that that impact on people, especially during crisis. So apart from the humanitarian work that we do, we realize that we need also to look at system strengthening, approaches that actually look at climate justice, gender justice and women rights, and governance and accountability, to be able to ensure that even as we do the humanitarian support, that we have also looked at the structural inequalities that create vulnerabilities. As social protection lead, what I look at is basically any instruments that can be able to support communities to be able to withstand shocks. So looking at anything that looks at building the capacities of communities to be able to be strong enough or resilient enough in the face of crisis. And the social protection space is very wide. When you look at it from the formal instruments of social protection, we have social health. SHA would fall under that category. NSSF also falls under that category because it looks at cushioning people after they leave work, social assistance, which is very synonymous with social protection, which looks at the cash transfers, programs like the HSNP by the government, hunger safety net program by the government, that is a form of social protection. And then we have also the social protection programs that is considered less formal. Even Harambee is a social protection because the community is cushioning another member of the community against a certain crisis. Yes.
That's a lot. That encompasses a lot, right? So how do you achieve all of this? You work with partners?
Yes, we do. Ahmed is here. He'll talk a bit about ASA Humanitarian Network. But over the years, we realized that we can't be everywhere. So we've cut down our operations from having hundreds of staff down to less than 40, ceding space to local humanitarian organizations, CBOs, the communities themselves. So our operations have gone towards being more efficient because when you work with partners, for example, AHN currently has 30 plus partners, and they're bringing in more to the fray. You're able to reach the most hard to reach areas, and working with local partners who understand the context very well and are able to give humanitarian support in the best way possible, as fast as possible, because they're right there in the middle of it all. So that is the one of the ways that we work. We also work a lot through the systems, the government systems that have been put in place. Work a lot with governments, county governments. We have very technically sound government officials that we work with, very dedicated. And of course, for sustainability's sake, you also have to work through these structures to ensure that whatever you do has a lasting impact. And another thing that we do that I would like to mention is around testing models that can be handed over to the government to work on. For example, I'm not sure if you know that Oxfam is one of the organizations that piloted the Hunger Safety Net program.
Oh, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, so we piloted the Hunger Safety Net program, and then it was handed over to the government to be done at scale. So that's another model that we use, testing models, and once we have a proof of concept, being able to hand that over to government bodies or even local organizations that can be able to take it forward.
Okay. So now I'll ask you, Ahmed, because you're on the partnership end of things. You talked about, did you talk about 30 partners under?
30 plus.
30 plus under AHN, the ASAL Humanitarian Network. How does this model work?
Thank you very much. And ASAL Humanitarian Network, as the name suggests, came together first in 2019. And was just a loose setup. It's made up of 30 initial founding agencies. But in 2015, when the devolution came into place, the local actors in the ASAL space came together to really analyze what civil society should be doing. And during that kind of an analysis, we did a convening and got an external person to convene us. We were able to look at the space civil society needs to play in a devolved government system.
And what is that? What is it
so
what role is that civil society should be playing? So
the four things that we identified at that moment was for it to really work well was to really have active citizens who can be able to participate, be part of planning and budgeting processes, and can be able to hold as rights holders their government who are duty bearers to the priorities and needs of they came up with. The second one we identified was that women really had little say in most of the things. They were not economically empowered. They were not able to make decisions. They were not part of even the aspects of leadership in campaigns. They were very low. So that was the second thing we saw. The third thing we saw in the ASAL areas was that if there was no peace, there's no security, and therefore there's no development. And where there's no development, then you cannot be able to really have peace and security. So from that kind of perspective, we looked at it and then said, what is the next level? So when the devolution setup came into place, we were looking at, in the Constitution, there is something about equalization fund. So we said there is need to really apply an equalization fund across a number of counties which are below in development, which are not equitably developed. And we were looking at that time, the only way to really get the small micro work that is being done by counties to be scaled up was the need to really come up with the economic blocks as at that time. And it's good to know that around 8 or something like that are now in existence. And largely, that equalization fund, as it is today, is not being implemented in line with the Constitution and the way it was supposed to be at county level. Now it's been done all the way at sub-locational level. So it is so fragmented that there are small pieces of jobs. Now the ASAL Humanitarian Network in 2019 now looked at it and said, as local actors, we are in the front line, we are seeing crises coming up, and we really needed to take these actions first. And we approached a number of like-minded agencies, including Oxfam, to be able to now take the bull by the man to ourselves. Instead of waiting and being partnered with, we made ourselves a partner of choice. So we came up with harmonized models, and with those harmonized models, walked the steps slowly. So when we started that kind of activities, Oxfam, as we speak today, by the time it was in 2019, it was only working with 2 members of the ASAL Humanitarian Network, who have been partners with Oxfam since 1995 or 1999, one of them. So as we speak today, Oxfam is partnering with 14 of those members, but a number of other organizations have also done that. So we work on harmonized models. Harmonized models in the context that we want to showcase things things that can be done at scale as well. So, for example, the cash transfer programming, we have an 8-step model, which entails coordinating with the government to be able to identify localities which are in crisis, to be able to really do the process to a level where the 14 organizations are already infrastructurally ready and are having Safaricom M-Pesa mechanisms, which they can do with a click of a button to send money to 20,000, 10,000 households at once. The second other one we have partnered with Oxfam to be able to do is what we call an e-voucher mechanism. And it's still using a Safaricom model. And what it's doing is using a market-based approach where a young lady who is in her reproductive age should be able to find a sanitary pad in a shop at the lowest level in the village, if it's possible, and also the NFIs that are needed in that space. We also work in the space of gender and protection, WASH, water, and a number of things. But some of our members also work in peace building, they work in climate change space, we work in health, they work in gender and protection, they work in quite a number of diverse kind of sectors. So the ASAL Humanitarian Network largely is amplifying voices of communities and the members. The second bit we are doing is to bring localized action into effect, and then partnering with stakeholders to be able to have an effective aid system that works for people in crisis. So that, in a nutshell, is what the ASAL Humanitarian Network does.
All right. Bessie, over the last couple of weeks, we've been carrying some special reports. One, Lilian Muli was in Turkana, and some of what and you know, the tragedy that happened there. And in her, when she was signing off with that report, and that is the lives that were lost there, the fishing community and how it was affected. And she mentioned that it looks like these humanitarian organizations are stepping in where government ideally should be operating, because if that is not a viable form of economic employment, there were alternatives. Women, for as are still being taught how to bake, taking part in such activities. What do you say to that?
As humanitarian organizations, we can never usurp the role of government. They are the duty bearers in this space. We only come in to complement what they're doing. So first and foremost, in matters of security, of course, we cannot come in. Maybe the peace building efforts that we usually do, that we can do as we do the other humanitarian work that we do. So that the role of government cannot be sidestepped. Yeah. And over the years, we have seen a very transformative change within the humanitarian sector. So a lot of it has been driven by progressive government policies. As the duty bearer and as the force that brings together the different structures and the systems that we need to operate in, we cannot take that role. So even as we do all this other work, we call upon the government to take its place as the duty bearer and as the main coordinating body, to be able to also make the space work for ourselves and for the citizenry, because their main responsibility is towards the citizens of Kenya. Yeah.
So as we look at the humanitarian space, there have been significant funding cuts.
Yes.
How are you managing that?
So the funding cuts, I know a lot of people have started to be privy of the cuts this year because of USAID. But the funding cut started a while back. When Kenya was declared a middle-income country, already we had started to see funding cuts. And then you'll also note that in the region, we are the most stable economy. We are surrounded by many fragile countries. So when there is less resources to go around, people have to prioritize. So prioritization comes, you have to look at protracted crisis in other parts of the globe, where the funding is going, the fragile nations around us. So these cuts have been there, but the USAID, of course, the USAID withdrawal has really precipitated the situation. And so there's this talk about the humanitarian reset. But basically, that's where we are at right now, trying to figure out where we go next. And this is a very good opportunity for us as Kenya to think through how we fund disaster risk management. And there is a bill that has not been enacted, the DRM bill, that should set the foundation, the legal foundation for this. There's a setup of a DRM fund, that should be able to support the gaps that we are seeing.
When you say DRM fund, you mean?
Disaster risk management. Disaster risk management fund that should be able to plug some of these holes. And when I talk about the government having the role of even coordinating all of us have different pots of funds here and there that we support with. And if we have proper coordination, there should be able to be a pooled fund system that allows us to maximize the little funds that we have. Currently, there's a lot of fragmentation of funding, even within the government, the different government bodies, that if we are able to defragment this and have pooled funding and have proper systems to be able to make the money that we have go further without stepping on each other's toes, we'll probably be in a better space than we are right now. And since the donor funding has reduced, we in country need to look at ourselves and check where are the gaps. We have one of the EACC reports from last year talking about around 1.6 million being lost to corruption per day. The DRM fund was looking at around 5 billion. It was 1.6 billion being lost to corruption in a day. The DRM fund is looking at 5 billion to start up the funding. So that amount, 3 days of the money that we lose to corruption can fund a whole DRM budget. If you come to social protection, the budget that we have this year, 2025 to 2026, is around 41 billion. In that same week, we can be able to fill that gap of budget. You can imagine that 600 million that is lost in a year can fund the DRM budget 120 times. Social protection budget 15 times. So we really need to look inwardly and see where can we plug these holes. What can we do differently as a country to be able to serve the citizenry better? And as humanitarian organizations, how can we coordinate better to make the resources that we have go further?
From the point of view of EHN, the ASAL Humanitarian Network, given these funding crises, where do you are your partners, the 30 and more that are being onboarded, Do they rely primarily on foreign donors, or do they get some money from, for example, counties have DRM budgets?
First of all, as had already been said, this third sector, which is the civil societies, really its role is to complement and gap fill. And it's the responsibility of really the duty bearer to take up most of it. But largely to look at the humanitarian system and looking at what we are calling a grand bargain, we were looking at a situation where decisions are done.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So decisions are done based on, you see, globally, the number of crises that are coming up are too many. The little money that is collected from the West for the purpose of doing humanitarian action is limited. So the little we get was supposed to be used for a grand bargain internally, where we can be able to get other resources from government, private sector, and so many other community processes to be able to really do these kinds of things. So most of the resources which the local actors we are talking about are having in hand are from external sources. So it's time government steps in, does the real allocation of resources. For example, from last year, the budget of 2023-2024, the analysis from the Auditor General was that out of the 189 billion that was meant for development, around 80 billion went back, which was not spent. And we are talking about 30% of those resources being spent. If you really look at how things are at the county levels, if that 80%, all the 47 counties had enacted the disaster risk management bills and acts and put 2% of that budget aside, we are only talking about how much? 3 billion out of that 80. So in essence, unless we really start thinking about how crises happen and looking at how developmental gains are being washed away by what you are just showing on the impact of the floods, like now in the Tana River Basin, was quite a lot. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, we see, so it is critical that if 30% of that money that is in development budget is also being done by service providers, and then you look at the bloating that we are paying around the budgets that are being spent, 70% on recurrent costs, you wonder now how best are we going to be doing. But we know Kenya is a low middle income country. It's able to really facilitate these kinds of processes, and it's time we up the game and internally be able to really do this. So local actors who are supposed to be gap filling and doing all this, that money can be used to leverage external resources very well, and we'll be able to do it. But the problem we're having is we're having a lot of very good policies. We're having very good technical people. We have the resources, but when early action is required, and early warning has already been given, no early action is happening. Mm-hmm. So we are coming at the tail end. And when you start spending at the tail end, if you had acted early with 1 Kenya shilling, you will have been able to save 5 Kenya shillings. So from that kind of a process, there's really need for us to really look at inwardly to be able to resource these kinds of things. Kenya is seen as a front player in these kinds of things, and we are able to really kickstart that kind of a process.
Okay. Bessie, given all the needs you highlighted at the very start, how do you prioritize?
Our prioritization is very simple. We go to the community and we listen to community priorities. Of course, at the very core of what we do, life-saving comes first. So anything we can do in terms of life-saving support, that's where we focus first. But you know very well, communities are the first line of response. Before the emergency is declared, these communities are there for each other. They're supporting the most vulnerable amongst them. So even at the point where we come and provide humanitarian support, they've already started, yeah? So working with these communities to know where it pinches most and to know what needs to be prioritized, I think is the only way of doing it and of providing dignified support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ahmed, many civil society organizations that work in similar spaces, how do you prevent overlap such that some areas are not forgotten and all the focus is on one area?
In the Kenyan system, there are structures, and the structures up to county level have what we call the county steering groups. In this, any person who comes into a county to do any kind of response first goes for a coordination mechanism meeting, and from there prioritization is already done where the hotspots are. Largely from a government point of view, because every Kenyan is in need in a crisis period, normally that's the only key hindrance from a perspective of doing that kind of a setup. But coordination happens, prioritization is done to locations that are in need, and when we go to the village, still the whole people in the one village are not at the same level. So our reprioritization happens. So we do what we call community-based targeting mechanism. Once the communities do a community-based targeting, then we do a scientific thing called verification. So we look at the food consumption score, we look at the coping strategy index, the dietary diversity, and from that perspective, if a village list which was brought by a community-based targeting process does not reach a threshold of 90% of the people are not in borderline or poor food habits and all that, then we repeat that kind of exercise with the community. Okay. So that is how we avoid the overlaps, and that coordination mechanisms really help to really do that. But whatever we are going to go and do, if you really look at the humanitarian financing mechanism, it was only in 2022 that we got 81% of the resources needed to really do what we needed to do. But thereafter, we are talking about 45% of the needs. So the needs are always overstripping what is available, and that's why it's critical to really do targeting.
All right. And how, when you speak of a community-based targeting mechanism, there are communities, Bessie, that are more disproportionately affected than others, and women are one such group, women and children. Do you give them priority?
Yes, so
the elderly, disabled person.
When you go into a community, there are definitely people who are more marginalized than others. And the perspective of, for example, an elder, a leader in the community, would not be the same perspective as a widow in the community who has several children who she's supporting. It wouldn't be the same perspective as a youth, for example, who probably was taking care of his father's livestock, and now they have all been decimated in the drought, for example. And maybe at that point he never went to school because he was taking care of his father's livestock. So all these perspectives are very different, and how you support these people is also very different. Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of response, and that's why having a very gender transformative kind of perspective when setting up these kinds of programs and understanding the unique needs of each of these different groups that I've mentioned and that you mentioned is very important before setting up a project, before going full throttle with it. And that's partly where the work of AHN comes in as well, because they are at that level of the community and they understand the different needs. They also understand some of the cultural differences within these communities and what can make some of the members of these communities even more vulnerable because of the cultural practices, because of their situation as well. So it's very important that you get it right from the assessment level, yeah, before coming up with the kinds of before coming up with a project to support these communities. Otherwise, you get it wrong, and whatever you do will not have lasting impact.
Okay, speaking of a lasting impact, before I invite you to give your final remarks, perhaps, Ahmed, you can tell us how much of a consideration is project sustainability?
First, the key aspect of localization, which we were talking about and trying to push, is trying to make sure that the capacities exist at the community level and also at the local partner level. However, a local partner's capacity can only be sustained through a multi-year financing mechanism, or in a mechanism where there's going to be what we call an overhead. So we are pushing an agenda called localization, which means if we get the resources and use it for the leveraging perspectives and keep those capacities at that level for a longer period, then it's easier to be able to continue doing this work without so much. So in essence, the INGOs like Oxfam and others in time should be able to be working themselves out of work. We too should be working ourselves out of work. For example, if government had stepped in and it was just about accountability and other things which we are doing instead of gap filling, then it means our roles will have changed. So until we reach a level where that kind of an approach really works, then local actors normally get short-term financing. So you bring on board a number of staffing, and then because the project has ended, then you lay them off. So the capacity that is being talked about being built is not sustained and retained. So there is really need to really look at it from a perspective that any project that is coming has that kind of ingrained processes into it. So we push a percentage which the local actor can use to be able to do audits, to be able to do governance meetings, to be able to push on all those things. And then secondly, to be able to even build their own way of really looking at it. And it's good that we have come now with the PPO Act. The PPO Act now allows local actors to be able to really do something that is not for profit, for the purpose of doing business, but for the purpose of sustainability. So the regulations and the processes that are ongoing at the PBO processes, we are part of it, and we are pushing that agenda to ensure local actors can also be able to be part of that processes to build the sustainability components as ingrained in the funding mechanisms.
All right. Lastly, Bessie, a lot has been said in the last half hour. If there's one thing you'd like to remain with us and to leave an impression on, what would it be?
Kenya is a resilient country. Kenyans are resilient. And we have beautiful policies in place. We have very good technical capacities in country. There's a lot of need. Still, there's a lot of need. But we have the systems in place to be able to deal with the gaps and the issues that we have. To do this, we need a lot of political goodwill to be able to implement these beautiful policies that we have so that they don't stay in cupboards and gather dust, yeah? So
you influence policy?
Yes, we do influence policy. And one of the major things that would really influence the work that we do is passing the disaster risk management bill, yeah, that is currently being discussed and has kind of met a lull in the past couple of months. This would set a very good legal framework and foundation for all these other policies and all these other funding instruments that we need to put into place so that we can better the humanitarian space. So if there's anything I could say is that we need that political goodwill to be able to move things along. And I think if we do this humanitarian reset right, we'll be able to achieve a lot for our citizenry.
All right. Ahmed, your last word.
First and foremost, and as I started off, the ASALs are supposed to be the future of Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the land fragmentation happening in the highlands, so-called highlands, which now also are facing droughts and other things because of climate change, when a crisis hits that space, it will really affect the Kenyan economy. Just a little bit of statistics. With 90% of the land being there, with 90% of the tourist industry, all the destinations being in those locations, with 70% of the livestock, which puts 90% of the meat on the table is from the ASALs, it's right time to put the right, not to forget it, and put local leadership, anticipatory action, climate smart work there, and to be able to really get stable future going forward. So Kenya must invest very well in the ASALs now and make that political decision right.
Because you mentioned climate change, financing locally led climate action program.
Mm.
This, basically, the government came up with it.
Yes.
Are you involved in any way?
Yes, so what we do is, when it started first, it was done through a program funded by DFID, together with the government, and it started in 5 counties. Sorry.
No problem.
So those 5 counties, that was Wajir, Isiolo, Makueni, Garissa, and Kitui, were the first counties that started off the climate change funding mechanisms. And it was accompanied as a process using DFID funding. And it was great to be able to see that model has been blown up to 47 counties by World Bank FLOCA funded. We are part of it now from a perspective of engaging civil society in it and ensuring the accountability and processes are really input into it. But it is supposed to work on community resiliency, on community identified priorities.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how we are part of it.
All right. So, Anna, thank you. Bessie, I'll start with you. Bessie Nikozi, who is a social protection lead, Oxfam Kenya. Ahmed Ibrahim, convener, the AHN ASAL Humanitarian Network, Oxfam partner in humanitarian projects in northern Kenya. Thank you for giving us a sense of the state of humanitarian support in the country. We take a break, but we do have more stories and the sports news coming up. Thank you for staying with us on Sunday Live. A family in Nairobi's Uthiru estate is calling on authorities to thoroughly investigate a case of alleged negligence reported at St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Health Center in Kangemi. This is after their kin died while undergoing a cesarean section. According to the family, the doctors administered an overdose of the anesthesia. Franklin Wala with more.
Sorrow, agony and grief. It is the sad state of affairs at the home of Faith Binzali, who tragically lost her life in an operation that went wrong at a local facility within Nairobi's Kangemi estate. Her family says the 26-year-old was admitted at St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Health Center in Uthiru on the 2nd of September as an expectant mother. After a long day of waiting, medics at the facility recommended a cesarean section to save both lives. Lucky enough, they received the good news of having been blessed with a baby boy.
And in about less than 30 minutes, they come back and tell us, now those who are getting disturbed, we have good news. We have delivered a baby safely.
Unfortunately, the celebration was cut short.
I saw the baby and they asked me to pray. So I prayed for the baby. Immediately I said, Amen. A lady from the opposite door hurriedly rushed in and picked a certain machine that appeared to be like a machine for oxygen. I was told to go to a certain room, and the two guys, one wearing something like appeared to be maybe a surgeon, I don't understand, said, please come, have a seat. And the person said, unfortunately, we tried our best, but we could not make it.
A father received the bad news of the passing on of a firstborn child who did not make it from the theatre. He forced his way to the surgical ward only to encounter a very disturbing scene.
I just rushed into that room. What I saw, I was met by a devastating state. Blood everywhere. My daughter soaked in blood. I tried to source information from the doctors. They were nowhere.
No one was there to explain to them events before and after the surgery. The autopsy on her body revealing the cause of death.
The doctor said my daughter died of lack of oxygen to the brain. Number two, it appeared like they injected her excessive anesthesia. Now I want to know, why would these people do that?
Mimi au madaktari kwanza nataka kuona. Waka hivi mbele yangu wanasema complications. Is it a complication yake kumbe ni yao?
We sought audience with the management of the facility, but there was no one to address us. Nurses who received us at the facility regretted the incident off camera.
Kozani mtu alikuwa pressure in my heart. She was like deep down in my heart.
Up to the time we left the hospital, we have not had any information.
Police say they are piecing together crucial leads into the happenings and are currently recording statements from persons of interest. Franklin Wala, Citizen TV.
The anti-counterfeit agency, working with the multi-agency team, uncovered a syndicate through which cooking oil unfit for human consumption is imported into the country. The consignment, worth 100 million shillings, was seized in a private yard in Mombasa. The team raided a den in Shimanzi and intercepted several 20-litre cooking oil jerrycans of different brands and 13 tankers used to smuggle the products into the yard. Led by the Coast Region Anti-Counterfeit Agency boss Ibrahim Bule, the Coast Region Police Commander Ali Nuno, the team confiscated jerrycans of more than 10 Kenyan brands, which the team says could have been used to fill with the substandard and unfit cooking oil to be diverted into the local market. Nuno says the owner of the yard has been identified and is being pursued.
To come forward and assist us, and we shall also ask the Kenya Bureau of Standard and to come forward, NEMA and everybody, to ensure that Kenyans are safe from such unscrupulous business people who want to make profit out of Kenyans.
We have also identified there is a quite number of offences or maybe crimes of other jurisdictions are also committed within the facility. That is the reason now multi-agency team has been informed by the commissioner, so they join hand with the Anti-Counterfeit Authority to unravel and also detect and also deal the case under the criminal procedure.
I want to inform the general public to be very careful on what they consume, because the conditions under which this fuel is being processed and prepared is very unpathetic and unhealthy. We have the Ministry of Public Health here. Now, Kenyans to be very careful on what they consume. Could be this why cases of serious chronic diseases are coming up, which are unexplained.
Royal Media Services radio presenter Samuel Muturi Mwiro has been ordained as a Reverend. Muturi, a presenter with Inoro Radio, who has been a licensed probationer in Presbyterian Church of East Africa, was ordained as a full minister at a colorful ceremony attended by family, friends and RMS colleagues. Speaking during the ceremony, presided over by the 24th PCA General Assembly moderator, Thegu Mutahi, Muturi thanked the church and the Royal Media Services for the achievement.
For District 4, today is District 4 on duty. Where is Grace?
Since last month, but one, we have been licensing and ordaining ministers. We did the licensings, then ordinations followed, and today is the very end of that season. And within that season, we have licensed and ordained 61 men and women who are now going to serve the church in various capacities.
On behalf of the chairman, Dr. S.K. Macharia, Mrs. Macharia is out of the country. They would have loved to be here today. And Wachira Waruru, niwaambie asanteni sana kutupatia huyu mchungaji. Sasa tutakuwa tu na church yetu hapo kwa ofisi, lakini naona ile language mnaongea hapa tutajaribu juu tuko na station mingi na zinaongea lugha tofauti tofauti, but I'm really happy to be here, and congratulations boss. Asanteni sana kanisa.
Kenya's road to the FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup 2026 is officially underway, with coach Jacqueline Juma naming her provisional squad for the second round of qualifiers. Kenya will face Ethiopia in their first test of the campaign, a two-legged tie that starts in Ethiopia between September 19th and 21st, before the return leg in Nairobi from September 26th to 28th. The winner advances to the third round in February next year, where Tanzania or Angola await. The team's preparations will feature two intensive mini camps aimed at sharpening skills and helping the technical bench finalize the squad.
Nimekuwa under 18, under 20 yenye tulicheza na Angola, but ya Cameroon sikumekuwa nafanya exam na nimefurahi sana. And we are looking forward to win the matches na pia tufike World Cup pile under 17. Kuna ile watu wanajipush bado cause kila mtu anataka namba, kila mtu anataka baki na travel. So ni poa. Mimi nimeenjoy day one ya training.
Actually, most of them are very experienced players from all over. Even if you look at Ethiopia, some of them are even playing Sekafa right now. So we had to combine experienced players, the likes of Fasila, who are in the national team as well, Moranga, Vida. So with the under 17, so that now we can get a formidable team that can give us what we want.
FKF Premier League champions Kenya Police FC will be back in action on Monday at the Sekafa Kagame Cup in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The law enforcers face Ethiopian Coffee SC, also known as Ethiopian Bana, in their final Group A fixture. Police FC sit on 3 points after beating Gade Cortes, but falling to Singida Black Stars. Speaking ahead of the decider, Captain David Cheche Ochieng said team confidence is high as they aim to finish strong and book a slot in the quarterfinals.
Pelkovu tumesema si mara ya kwanza tupatana nao. This is the second time. Ile kwanza ilikuwa kwa tournament. The other one pia ni kwa tournament, but this one iko na more meaning. The last one was that had a lot of meaning than this one. So kileza sema tu it's a good team. They're a ball playing team, possession team. They are a good team, tuna respect hiyo. But sasa kesho pia kama tu last time lazima tuwapige. Juu pia last time tuliwapiga, this time pia tunawapiga.
Michael Selelo was in a class of his own as he clocked 48 minutes 43.10 seconds to win the 14-kilometer Meru University Mountain Run at the Marimba campus in Meru County on Sunday. The race, which marked the climax of the Mount Kenya Trail Series, powered by the Kenya Tourism Board under the Magical Kenya brand, saw Shadrach Korir and Josephat Tuwei complete the podium in the men's elite category. In the women's 14-kilometer event, Gladys Songol and Regina Wambui, both of Nairobi, took first and second place in 56 minutes and 56.11 seconds and 57 minutes and 46.71 seconds respectively, while Jedida Chepkemoi from Nakuru finished third.
Siku ya leo kwa ajili nimetoka mashindano wiki iliyopita, lakini nilijaribu kwangu vilivyo kujipa moyo, lakini nimefurahia kwa ajili nimeweza kushinda siku ya leo.
So vile tumeanza kukimbia, challenges kwangu ilikuwa ni kupotea. Nilikuwa mbele. Watu kufika mahali unaambiwa sio hapo. Kitambo urudi watu wameenda, unafukusa tena mpaka upate. So kosi haikuwa mbaya.
The sharpshooters from the Bamburi Rifle Club on Sunday organized a curtain raiser aimed at honing their skills in preparation for the upcoming World Championships in South Africa. Stakeholders are urging the government to provide financial support to cover their travel expenses and accommodation. Furthermore, they have called on the government to assist in promoting the growth of the sport within the country, enabling them to compete on equal footing with nations where shooting sports have already flourished. This support is essential for enhancing their performance on international platforms.
Katika zile stages tumeset hapa ni zile ambazo utaenda kushindania kule South Africa. So tumejaribu kuweka iko na changamoto kidogo so that tuweze tukienda kule quad shoot tupate kupata zikiwa rahisi.
Kenya has definitely the possibility to grow a lot in this sport, and we need to welcome more shooters from disciplined forces and civilians also.
There are young shooters ambao wameingia katika hii mchezo, and it is a very very interesting thing. Na hata wengine wameingia juzi lakini they are challenging even the wale ambao walianza kucheza kitambo.
Hata nilikuwa nimezungumza jana na Waziri Mvurya aangalie kuna namna gani tunaweza kukipa motisha, kama vile rais anapoangazia mambo ya mpira na kuangazia mambo ya mpira wa vikapu, pia hili ni moja ambalo tunaweza kuliangazia kama
World number 1 Aryna Sabalenka battled past home favorite Amanda Anisimova to retain her US Open title, her first Grand Slam trophy of the year. Sabalenka held her nerve to win 6-3, 7-6, 7-3 in a hard-hitting final between two of the biggest ball strikers in women's tennis. An emotional Anisimova, still reeling from her Wimbledon final defeat, was left in tears after falling short on home soil. Going down 6-love, 6-love.
Champion, Aryna Sabalenka.
All right, thank you, Wycliffe Orandi, for the heads up. Let's take a look at some of the feedback we've generated tonight. Let's see who is first up. I see behind me Babu Michael K.E. Can we take him on there we go. This issue of arson in schools, learning institutions have now become a matter of great concern. Parents have been bearing costs of these aftermath, not knowing even how they started. It is high time pupils, students, be held accountable as soon as possible. It continues, this particular message continues to read, just want to join other Kenyans in sending sincere condolences to the fallen ex-member of Parliament, Minister Dalmas Otieno Anyango, a very humble and dedicated leader throughout his leadership. And after I haven't heard of any serious corruption, etc. allegations, rest in peace. This is Okelo Mwalimu, who says it is unfortunate that every time we make one stride ahead in the fight against GBV, some felons push us 3 steps back. This is unacceptable. The government must crack the whip on perpetrators with no mercy. The courts too must play their role by fast-tracking GBV cases. This is Mark Makuda, who says, who is the current custodian of Karura Forest? Is it Friends of Karura or KFS? It seems like a supremacy battle between the two. He also has opined on the SGBV question. Something needs to be done. Both Tana River County government and national government need to address this menace. It is a sad ordeal. This shouldn't happen in this century. Engineer Lazaro, humanitarian support in the country needs political goodwill and freedom to operate freely from micromanagement from the government. All right, that concludes Citizen Sunday Live. I've been your host, Olive Burrows. The sign language interpreter has been Yula Nzale. Have a good week.